when I was like 2 or 3 years old, I remember going to the mall with my mom and climbing inside one of the clothing racks and just hiding in there for as long as I could. I don't remember ever feeling more safe than I did inside that clothing rack. A few years later, my dad built a fort for me in our backyard, and my mom found this army cot that we stuck in there. I spent hours inside that fort, just lying on the cot and staring out the windows at the clouds as they passed overhead. I've just always liked that feeling of being enclosed inside a tiny space. Now, ironically, I love to travel, and I especially love road trips. By the time I turned 40, my wife and I, along with our 2 kids, had already visited all 50 states. Of course, all that travel came to a grinding halt when COVID hit in 2020. All of our trips and vacation plans got canceled, and I started working from home full time. Now that's when I discovered van life. I was so stir crazy while being stuck at home that I must have watched at least 1,000 van life videos on YouTube. So what do you do when you're addicted to watching van life videos and you're stuck in Oklahoma for a couple of years? I can tell you what I did. I bought a van. In the spring of 2022, I paid $6,500 for this 2007 Ford E250 with 120,000 miles. It was a delivery van, so I spent a few weeks removing the cargo shelves and security cage and the bars on the windows. The engine cowl was all scuffed up, so I repainted that. I installed a touchscreen stereo because that seemed important, and I even cut a hole in the roof and installed one of those Max Air fans. I also bought a bunch of stuff for the van. I bought a Mr. Buddy heater and a water jug with a USB-powered faucet and a bucket to poop in. I even bought one of those giant Chinese power banks that turned out to be a real dud. Just as I was getting ready to start building up my van, COVID ended. I mean, it didn't end, but things began opening back up. We went on our first family vacation in over 2 years. We started taking road trips again, and the van began collecting dust in the driveway. Now, you might think that my desire to finish this van would go away, but it hasn't. In fact, if anything, it's stronger than it's ever been. I have to finish this project. The thought of sleeping inside this van gives me the same feeling I got as a kid, hunkering down inside a blanket fort in my bedroom. I want to hit the road, man. I want to find some adventure, whether it's a weekend stay in a parking lot or a month-long trip across the country. Now, I'm not going to lie, I have no intention of ever living in this van full-time. I got a real nice house and a real nice family, and I own more stuff than I probably should. But if I can do a few laps around the country and see some cool stuff while eating and sleeping and hanging out in the back of this van, well, I can't really imagine anything that sounds like more fun than that. I've got pretty bad ADD, and I will never finish this project without making a list, so that's where I'm starting. I know I need to start on the floor first, and one of the first things I need to do is fill all those holes left behind by the shelves I pulled out. Now, I'm not a handyman. I'm an IT guy by trade, but I am pretty good at watching YouTube videos and learning how to do stuff from other people. Not too long ago, I watched a guy fill holes in the floor of his bus by using a stick of JB Weld putty, so that's what I'm gonna do. So here's my friendly disclaimer. None of my videos should be taken as how to do things. They're more of a, this is how I did things. I should also point out that I'm not sponsored by Ryobi or Monster Energy drinks or anything else, although I've probably spent more on those 2 things than I have on the van itself. Now, before starting, I had to clean out the back of the van. I got the big stuff out with a broom and the rest of the dirt out using my air compressor. I didn't realize until I laid down on the floor, but the back of the van is still pretty gross, so I'll definitely have to do some more cleaning before I lay down my subfloor. Now, in case you didn't notice, I'm pretty fat. I already know that, so you don't need to point it out in the comments. I got a desk job about 25 years ago that has not helped the situation. Then one time I was walking down the side of the interstate and got hit in the back by a truck that was doing 70 miles an hour. That sucked. Now I have a bad back and a bad knee and kind of a bad attitude. So I'm hoping this project will get me out and about and up and moving a bit more than I normally do. That would be great because I've already spent so much on this project that I can't afford Ozempic now. When I bought this van, it had a metal cage right behind the cab that was held in place with 4 bolts that ran right through the floor of the van and a set of metal shelves that were held in place with another 6 bolts. I'm hoping this stick of JB Weld is enough to fill all 10 holes. I've never used this JB Weld SteelStik stuff before, but it's pretty simple to use. All you gotta do is mush it together for a minute or two until the colors blend and it starts to feel warm, and then mash it down into the holes. I found that the JB Weld did a good job of sticking to the metal and a great job of sticking to my fingers. So here's essentially the entire process I used to fill the holes. First, I cleaned each area with some degreaser. Then I used my grinder to grind the area around the hole down to the metal. I used some more degreaser and a wire brush to make sure the area was clean and smooth, and then a rag to dry the whole area off. The more time I spent laying in the back of the van, the more I realized that I'm going to have to do some more work before I can install my floor. Now, I did use my power washer at one point and clean the entire back of the van out, but it looks like I'm going to have to do some sanding or grinding and apply some Rust-Oleum before I start installing my floor. Once you smash and knead the 2 parts of the putty together, it sets in about 3 to 5 minutes. I watched one video that said you need to let it set for 24 hours for it to fully cure, but I watched some other ones that said you didn't need to wait quite that long. It really wasn't a problem for me because, like I said, I have ADD, so I ended up going inside the house to wait for a few minutes and got sidetracked. I ended up taking an online guitar lesson, then I hung a picture up for my wife, then I put sunglasses on my skeleton, McRib, then I 3D printed some parts for an upcoming project, and finally I sat down to read a book. The next day, I sanded down all the weld spots, making sure to leave enough of the weld in place. I tried not to sand them down too far, but I got a little carried away because all those sparks made me feel like a real badass. While I was inside the van, I used that wire brush to clean up some more areas, and once that was done, I dragged the power washer back out again and cleaned off all the little metal shards and dirt that had been left behind. I've watched hundreds of videos on how other van lifers installed the floor in their vans. This weekend, I'll be buying everything I need to knock it out next week. It's happening. It's finally happening. I'm just getting this channel started, so if you would help me out, click like on this video. That would really help get my channel off to a good start. Also, if you want to follow the progress on this van or on the adventures I eventually taken on, click subscribe. That way you'll get updates every time I post a new video. You know, who knows, someday I may have merchandise for the channel, someday I may have a Patreon set up, but let's not put the cart before the horse. Right now what I need to do is finish building this van.